Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Side Quests. My name is John Carson. I am a former associate editor of Game Informer and current freelance writer for Game Informer and IGN. I'm here to talk to you today about a little game called Magic the Gathering. More specifically, Magic the Gathering Arena, the most current digital client for the game. Let's do a little history lesson here. About 30 years ago, Magic the Gathering, the trading card game, the physical cardboard game that's been around for forever, was released in 1993. It was created by a man named Richard Garfield. If you don't know about Magic itself, it is a game where typically you play with a deck of cards that have specific lands and spells in them. The lands will give you mana. Tap them for mana. Mana is your resource that you use to cast spells like creatures or things like Lightning Bolt, which deals damage to any target, or will draw you cards, or will put an enchantment onto the battlefield that will have special characteristics. There are 5 different colors in Magic. There's white, red, blue, green, and black. Each one of those has different characteristics. Blue is good at countering spells and drawing cards, kind of controlling the flow of the gameplay. White is good at putting a bunch of creatures on the board and maybe taxing your opponent's spells by making them cost more to cast. Red is good at fast action, like fast creatures, a low mana curve, and doing direct damage to opponents or creatures. Green is all about big creatures and slamming in hard on your opponent. Black is about using kind of everything at your disposal, even at the cost of your own life total. So you could draw cards, lose life. You can have bigger creatures that will have some sort of a downside for you, or they're good at causing kind of devious situations for either yourself or your opponent, and hopefully you win with those with that trickery. Now, Magic the Gathering is no stranger to having digital clients. Back in 1997, MicroProse actually had a PC version that had a way to duel using cards, but it also had a pretty cool RPG called the game itself was called Magic the Gathering, but what people refer to this RPG mode is Chandelar. And in Chandelar, you travel the world and you duel people, and you gain cards from dueling them, and then you add them to your deck so you could progress further and defeat some evil mages. After that, there was Magic the Gathering Online, which is actually still going today, and for a lot of people, it's kind of the preferred way to play Magic the Gathering online. But that has probably the biggest pool of cards. It definitely does have the biggest pool of cards out there. And a lot of older formats are played on that, like Modern, Legacy. Commander can be played on there. Commander's a very popular 100 card deck format that has some cool deck building restrictions. If you're not familiar with Commander, it is really what it is the biggest format out there right now. It is huge in casual play. You could play it with more than one person. Typically, it's played with about 4 or 5 people at the table. It's a ton of fun. You should check it out if you haven't. After that, there were some console and PC clients called Duels of the Planeswalkers that were kind of yearly iterations that would have the current standard sets that would come out. But what Duels of the Planeswalkers and Magic the Gathering Online have that are kind of a detriment for me are that they take a long time to play out games. They're not the sleekest clients in Magic. And after playing a lot of hours of games like Hearthstone, that's very like click and drag. It's visually exciting to look at. I wanted something that I could play at home that was as easy as Hearthstone to get into and to wrap my mind around and jam out quick games. But when I started playing Magic seriously in early 2017, all that was really there were Magic the Gathering Online and Duels of the Planeswalkers. Luckily, in late 2017, Wizards of the Coast, who is now the kind of the proprietor of Magic the Gathering and develops new sets, they announced and released a beta for what is now Magic the Gathering Arena, which takes a lot of those lessons from Hearthstone, making a visually interesting game board and simple to use interface for casting spells and playing cards, and having glanceable, like easy to grok information on the board. That beta came out in late 2017, and by 2019 the client was fully released. And since then, I would have to say that Magic the Gathering Arena is my most played game. If I were to look at my Epic Game stats here, I'm going to look at this really quick and be just disgusted by how much time I've put into Magic the Gathering. I've only put 1,763 hours into Magic Arena since it hit the Epic Game Store. So this is a game that I play nightly, daily, whenever I have free time. And it's one of the reasons why I love Arena, is that it has that flexibility that you could squeeze in a game here, you could squeeze in a game there. If you want to fire up a draft, you could do that. If you're not familiar with drafting is taking a few packs of cards, opening up one of those packs, taking what you think is the best card from that pack, and then passing it to another player. Typically, there's about 8 players around a table, or a virtual table in this case, and that process happens until you've picked up 45 cards, and then you build a 40-card deck from those cards, hopefully with good synergies and all in, or most in a specific set of colors that you deemed appropriate. And then you play out games against people. With Magic Arena, you're not tethered to when a card game store might be running an event, which is one of the aspects that when I first started playing Magic, I went in hard. I was playing at my local game store, Lodestone in Minnesota, about 3 times a week. Going in and paying $15-20 to do a draft or a sealed event. But I wanted to scratch that itch when I was at home, and those events only happened a couple of times a week. So with Arena, you can draft whenever you want. You could play a game of Standard, which is a constructed format with about 60 cards from sets from about the last 2 years. You could play Standard whenever you want, and that's one of the big strengths, I think, for Arena, is that flexibility of putting, or of being able to play whenever you find some free time. That's also married with the fact that Arena is not just a PC client; it's on iOS, it's on Android. You can play it; it's at your fingertips whenever you want it. And it also has modes where if you want to do a draft, you could do it with, if you want like a higher complexity draft experience, you can draft with real people. But if you only have like a few minutes here and there to draft or to build a deck, you can draft against bots, and really you could do a few card picks, drop it for a couple of hours, and then come back and pick up right where that that drafting process was. And you could finish picking out your cards and then build your deck and then play to the conclusion of the draft against real people. Arena, admittedly, isn't always in a great place in terms of its like economy. It doesn't have like card dusting to like Hearthstone does, where you can destroy cards that you own to then pay a resource from that destruction to build the cards that you want. But there are things like wild cards, which are kind of blank slate cards at different rarities, common, uncommon, rare, and mythic rare, where you can make whatever card that you want that's in the Arena client to then put into a constructed deck of your choice. I find that to be just fine for how I use the client. There are people who have issues with the expense of that in buying digital packs and maybe not getting the cards that you want or getting wild cards at an appropriate clip. But I think that it's a really good way. I think Arena has a good enough system to onboard people into building decks that will help them learn the game and get them into the whole ecosystem pretty well. There's for new players, I would recommend people loading up Arena and then going through what's called the Color Challenge. And what Color Challenge is it gives you decks in the different colors, so blue, black, white, red, and green, and you play through matches using those decks and kind of learning the ins and outs of each of those basic color archetypes. And then it gives you multicolored decks, so like maybe a red-white deck that focuses on building out a board full of creatures and maybe having like pump spells to increase their power and toughness, or a green-black deck that uses the graveyard that allows you to put big creatures on the battlefield, and then when they die, you can bring them right back. It's a really, I think, a really good way to teach people the game in a completely free way. Also, all of those decks that they provide for you in the Color Challenge are just added to your pool of cards free of charge. And those update every time a new set comes out, or about once a year, I guess. New sets are coming out every, like 3 months or so. About 4 times a year. Sometimes there's another set or two that they kind of sneak in there. So there's always something happening. There's always something new to play, which is really exciting for me. And it's really what's kept me going with Magic itself for the last 6 years and really Magic Arena. I can take my skills from Arena, things I learn in drafting, things I learn in building a standard deck, or any of the other formats that are in there. There's a ton of different formats you could play, going all the way to what they call historic. Historic is a format that uses every card in Arena. So like you're not limited to like, oh, it's the last 2 years of sets, or oh, you can use these cards, but like these cards aren't legal. Historic, it's anything goes. Whatever you've collected, whatever you've created with wild cards, you can build decks with, and it's a ton of fun. That's where you really get like your highest level of play, your more complex gameplay patterns, and it's really what I think is the pinnacle of formats, at least in Arena. What does set Arena apart from, let's say if you're playing. You've got an account in Magic Arena and you've got an account in Magic the Gathering Online. MTGO uses only cards that have been printed in paper. With Magic Arena, Wizards of the Coast has been playing around with some of the digital only aspects, like cards that are permanently changed as you play in a game, whether it's like power and toughness or mana cost. Or allowing you to like transform a card into other cards or make copies of cards to put into your hand, things that aren't physically possible or have like really difficult memory issues in paper Magic. They are playing around with that stuff on Magic Arena in what they call alchemy sets. which there's a format called Alchemy that takes all of the standard legal cards and these alchemy cards that are digital only with digital mechanics, but also they rebalance cards that are in standard. So if there's a card that's maybe too powerful in the regular standard format, they may have a tweaked alchemy version that makes it more fair. Or if there's an archetype that maybe isn't that strong, but is really cool flavor-wise, and like people have really wanted a way for that archetype to be competitive, they might buff the stats of specific cards and make that more playable in Alchemy. The iteration of the Alchemy cards it's divisive, and I am of two minds of it, but I'd rather that Wizards of the Coast make risky plays with the game and learn new things, learn what people like, what people don't like, and what they can do and can't do, rather than not trying anything at all. Magic's at its most interesting when potential mistakes are made by the developers, but a lot of fun can be had by the players in deck building, or if people want to run wild with a particularly powerful deck in that time frame, they can. Yeah, I won't talk your ear off too much longer about Magic Arena, but really it is you get the depth and complexity of the paper card game in a sleek, easy to use, visually interesting format. It was really the client that I always wanted when I started Magic, and luckily I got that pretty soon after I started playing a few years ago. And I can't recommend Arena enough. If you like card games, if you like deck builders, if you're into Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon, or if you used to play Magic 20 years ago with your friends on the sidewalk with some scratched up cards, and you want to either relive those moments or see what's new in the game, Arena is the way to do it. It's easy to install, it's easy to on-ramp into, and if there's really anybody out there that wants to learn more about Magic or wants some tips, feel free to hit me up on Twitter at John_Carson. Or really, there's a multitude of Magic resources on the internet. The game is 30 years old this year, so there's always somebody writing about it, theory crafting, posting deck lists, whatever. So there's a wealth of knowledge out there if you are looking to get into it. But yeah, I would say please try out Magic. And if Arena is the way to do it for you, perfect. If it's going into a local game store to do it and learning with friends or strangers like I did, that's also a 100% valid way to do it. But either way, give this game a try. It is really one of the best games ever made. So hopefully I will talk to you all soon about another game. But until then, have a great day and happy gaming.
Hey, Nerf herders.
You sure you want to go with that?
Hey, everyone?
There we go. More inviting.
Have you ever had a movie that you really wanted to love, but something holds you back?
Or one that you did love in spite of a flaw?
Well, I'm Kay Sagan.
And I'm Sam Alisea.
And on Another Pass, we sit down with cool guests to look at movies that we find fascinating.
But flawed.
And we try to imagine what could have been done when they were made to give them that little push.
We're not experts. We just believe in criticism.
Constructive criticism.
Sure.
So come take another pass at some movies with us.
And every now and then, we can celebrate movies that did it on their own, too.
You can find us at certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Pass it on.
CPOV.
certainpov.com.